Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. The light in my living room flicked on at 2:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was sitting on the edge of our bed in the dark, hands trembling, staring at my phone. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't even pretending to sleep. I was just sitting there, listening to the silence of our house on Birchwood Lane, knowing that silence was about to shatter. And then it did. The front door slammed open so hard the deadbolt left a dent in the drywall. A dent I would later photograph for the police report. My husband, Daniel, shot out of bed like he'd been electrocuted. He flipped on the hallway light and screamed. Not a shout. A scream. The kind of sound a grown man makes when he sees something that doesn't belong in his reality. His mother, Diane, was standing in our foyer at 2 in the morning. Mascara streaked down her face like war paint. Flanked by his sister, Stacy, and his Aunt Marlene. 3 women. 1 mission. They had come to tear me apart. Ha ha ha, you think I'm exaggerating. I am not exaggerating even a little bit. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how 3 grown women ended up breaking into my home in the middle of the night, how a birthday dinner at Rosario's Italian Grill turned into the ugliest family explosion I have ever witnessed in my entire life, you need to know what my life looked like before. You need to see the version of me that still believed peace was possible. The version that thought if I just tried a little harder, smiled a little wider, wrote one more check, everything would be fine. I was so naive. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. Let me take you back 16 months. My husband Daniel and I met at a corporate leadership conference in Nashville. The kind where they make you do trust falls and write your core values on sticky notes and you feel equal parts inspired and ridiculous the entire time. He was an operations manager for a shipping company. I was a senior financial analyst at a mid-size firm. We were both 32, both recently out of long relationships, both pretending we were perfectly fine on our own. He made me laugh during a coffee break by whispering commentary about the keynote speaker. This guy definitely practices his TED Talk in the shower, he said. And I snorted so hard I nearly choked on my latte. And that was it. That was the moment. Something about his timing, his warmth, the way he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in a room full of 200 people. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. I know. Fast. My best friend Lily raised an eyebrow when I told her. We were at brunch and she was stabbing a piece of French toast like it had personally wronged her. Sophie, you haven't even survived a Thanksgiving with his family yet. His family is great, I told her. His mom is a little intense. But she means well. Lily looked at me with the kind of pity that only a best friend can deliver without it feeling insulting. Intense, she repeated slowly. That's what you're going with. Here's the thing about Diane. In small doses she was genuinely charming. She would hug you too tight and call you sweetheart, and show up with Tupperware containers of her famous chicken casserole. She posted Bible verses on social media every morning. She volunteered at the church food pantry every single week. On paper she was a saint, but there were cracks. Small ones. The kind you only notice if you are paying very close attention. The first time I met her, dinner at her house in Glendale, a ranch-style home with a manicured lawn and a blessed sign above the front door, she spent 45 minutes telling me about Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Rebecca. Rebecca was just so sweet, Diane said, passing me the mashed potatoes without making eye contact. She used to help me in the garden every Saturday. She wanted children right away. You know, some women just have that maternal instinct. Daniel squeezed my knee under the table. Mom, Sophie's right here. Oh, I know, honey. I'm just making conversation. She smiled at me. It was the kind of smile that showed all of her teeth. So, Sophie, do you cook? I do, actually. I love trying new recipes. Good. Daniel needs home-cooked meals. He works so hard. Rebecca used to make him lunch every single day. She would pack it in one of those little bento boxes. Diane sighed like she was mourning someone who had passed on. Anyway, tell me about your job. You work with numbers. I'm a financial analyst. Oh, that's nice. So you're good with money. She said it in a way that made good with money sound like a character flaw. I let it slide. I let a lot of things slide. Daniel and I got married in a small ceremony at a vineyard just outside of town. 60 guests, a string quartet, wildflower centerpieces I had arranged myself. It was genuinely perfect. And then, Diane wore white. Not ivory. Not cream. White. A floor-length white dress with lace sleeves. Lily's jaw nearly hit the floor when she saw it. She pulled me into the bathroom while I was fixing my veil, and her eyes were absolutely wild. "She is wearing white to your wedding." "It's off-white," I said, even though it absolutely was not. "Sophie, that dress is whiter than your gown. I am not going to let it ruin my day." And I didn't. I danced with Daniel under string lights, and I told myself that the tears running down Diane's face during our first dance were about missing her late husband, Robert, who had passed away 6 years earlier. I told myself she was crying because she was watching her son start a new chapter without his father there to see it. I was probably half right. After the wedding, Daniel and I settled into a townhouse in a quiet suburb with good schools and a farmer's market on Sundays. We split the mortgage 50-50. I made slightly more than Daniel, around $96,000 to his $80,000, but we never made it strange. Joint checking for bills, separate accounts for personal spending. We were a team. Life was good. Really genuinely good. The kind of good that makes you nervous because you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Saturday mornings we made pancakes and listened to a true crime podcast. Wednesday nights we tried a new restaurant. We had a standing Sunday video call with my parents back in Ohio. And every other Friday we drove out to Diane's for dinner. Those Friday dinners. That is where I should have seen it coming. Started so small. So small that I felt like I was losing my mind for even noticing. Diane would make Daniel's favorite meal, and somehow forget entirely to check whether I had any dietary preferences. When I mentioned I was lactose intolerant, she served macaroni and cheese 3 weeks in a row. When I brought my own dish once, a quinoa salad with roasted vegetables, she looked at it like I had placed a foreign object on her table. "What is that?" Stacy asked, poking at it with a fork. Stacy was Daniel's younger sister, 26, still living at Diane's, working part-time at a nail salon. She had her mother's smile. All teeth. No warmth. "Quinoa salad with roasted vegetables," I said pleasantly. "We eat real food in this house," Diane said, and then laughed like it was the funniest thing anyone had ever said. Daniel laughed too. A short, uncomfortable laugh. The kind you give when you are choosing peace over principle. I ate my quinoa salad in silence. But here is the detail that matters. The one I did not fully understand until much, much later. Every single Friday dinner, at some point during the evening, Diane would bring up money. Never directly. Never in an obvious way. She would mention that her property taxes had gone up. She would sigh about the cost of Stacy's car insurance. She would casually drop that her water heater was making a strange noise and the repair estimate was nearly $2,000. And every single time, Daniel would glance at me, just a flicker, and then say, "We'll take care of it, Mom." The first time it was $400 for a plumber. Fine. The second time, $600 for a tree that had to come down. Okay. The third time, $1,200 for new tires on Diane's SUV, plus an alignment. I raised an eyebrow at that one, but I said nothing. Then the water heater. $1,800. Then Stacy needed help with the security deposit. $1,500. Then Diane's roof had a leak. $3,200. In our first 6 months of marriage, we had handed Diane over $8,700. I finally said something on a Tuesday night in March. Daniel was brushing his teeth and I was sitting on the bed with our bank statements open on my laptop. I kept the numbers there in front of me like armor. "Babe, can we talk about your mom's expenses?" He spit into the sink. "What about them? We have spent nearly $9,000 on her in 6 months. She's my mom, sophomore." "I know she is. But we have our own mortgage, our own bills. We were supposed to be putting money into a savings account for a real down payment on a house. We talked about this." Daniel came out of the bathroom, toothbrush still in hand, and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something that felt like disappointment dressed up as patience. "My dad's gone," he said quietly. "She has nobody. What am I supposed to do? Let her suffer?" "She's not suffering, Daniel. She has a pension. She has Social Security. And Stacy lives there rent-free. Why isn't Stacy contributing? Stacy's figuring herself out. She is 26. Not everyone has it together at 26, Sophie. He said my name like it tasted a little bitter. Not everyone had parents who paid for their college. That stung. My parents had helped with my tuition, yes. But I had also worked 2 jobs throughout school and graduated with $22,000 in loans that I paid off entirely by myself. I opened my mouth to say exactly that. But Daniel had already turned off the bathroom light and climbed into bed with his back to me. "She's my mom," he said again, quieter this time. "That's the end of it." I stared at the ceiling for a very long time that night, listening to him breathe. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Every marriage has them. We would figure it out. And then Diane's birthday started getting planned, and I realized we were not figuring anything out. We were heading straight for a cliff. Wait until you hear what happened next, because I promise you it gets so much worse before it gets better. It was Stacy who called me, not Daniel, not Diane. Stacy of all people, on a random Wednesday afternoon while I was in the middle of a quarterly report at work. "Sophie, we need to talk about Mom's birthday," she said, skipping any greeting entirely. "Okay. When is it again?" "April 22nd. We're doing dinner at Rosario's, the private dining room." I knew Rosario's. It was the nicest Italian restaurant in the area. White tablecloths. $45 entrees. A wine list that could make your credit card quietly weep. "How many people?" I asked. 32. I almost dropped my phone. 32 people at Rosario's. It's her 60th. It needs to be special. "Stacy, that's going to cost." I did the rough math in my head. Appetizers, entrees, drinks, dessert, tax, tip for a party that size. That could easily be $4,000 or $5,000. Maybe more. There was a pause. Then Stacy said in a voice so casual it made my skin crawl, "Yeah, that's why we figured you and Daniel would cover it." I gripped the edge of my desk. My coworker Marcus glanced over from the next cubicle. I forced my voice to stay completely level. "You figured we'd cover it. You guys make good money. And Mom does so much for everyone. It's the least we could do." A pause. "Well, the least you could do. The least I could do." I replayed that phrase 3 times in my head, each time feeling the temperature in my chest rise another degree. I thought about the $8,700 already gone. I thought about our empty savings account. I thought about Daniel saying that's the end of it, with his back turned to me in the dark. "I'll talk to Daniel," I said, and hung up before she could respond. That conversation happened on a Wednesday. Diane's birthday dinner was 17 days away, and I had absolutely no idea, not the slightest clue, that those 17 days were going to dismantle everything I thought I understood about my marriage, my husband, and the woman who raised him. That night, I did not bring it up with Daniel. I needed to think first. I needed to do what I do best. Run the numbers. Build an argument that could not be dismissed with "she's my mom." So I spent the rest of that week pulling together every single transaction, every payment, every check we had written to Diane or Stacy since the wedding. I built a spreadsheet, color-coded, dates, amounts, descriptions. $8,712. That number sat on my screen like an accusation. Not of Diane. Of me. Of my silence. Of every time I had bitten my tongue and told myself it was just family helping family. Our savings account had exactly $340 in it. We were supposed to have $15,000 saved by now. That was the plan. That was what we had agreed on before we ever signed the mortgage on the townhouse. I waited until Saturday morning. Pancakes. True crime podcast. Daniel was in a good mood, flipping pancakes way too high and catching them like a show-off. Ha ha ha, I loved that version of him. I genuinely did. But I also needed to protect us. "Hey, can we talk about your mom's birthday dinner?" I kept my voice light like it was no bigger a topic than which podcast episode to play. "Yeah, Stacy mentioned it. Rosario's, right? Sounds nice." "It does. But she said 32 people, and she said we'd be covering the bill." I paused. "Daniel, that's going to be $5,000 minimum. Probably closer to 6 with drinks and tip. It's her 60th sophomore. I understand that. But look." I turned my laptop around on the kitchen counter. "This is everything we've paid since the wedding. Almost $9,000. And our savings is empty. We had a plan. A house fund. Remember?" He finally looked at the screen. I watched his eyes move down the rows. The plumber. The tires. The water heater. Stacy's security deposit. The roof. His jaw tightened just slightly, just enough for me to notice. And for one beautiful, hopeful moment, I thought he was going to agree with me. I thought he was going to see the numbers and say, "You're right. This is too much. Let me talk to them." Instead he said, "You made a spreadsheet about my mother." My stomach dropped. "I made a spreadsheet about our finances." "No, you tracked every dollar we've spent on my family, like they're a line item in one of your quarterly reports." He turned back to the stove. "That's cold, Sophie." "It's not cold. It's math. We cannot afford this dinner. We can put it on the credit card. We just paid off your student loans 8 months ago." We agreed. No more debt. The pancake burned. Neither of us moved to do anything about it. Daniel stared at the blackened circle in the pan and I stared at him. "I'll figure it out," he said finally, his voice flat. "I'll talk to Stacy. Maybe we can split it." He did not talk to Stacy. I know because 4 days later Stacy texted me directly. Not Daniel. Me. "Hey Sophie. So I talked to the restaurant and reserved the private room. They need a credit card to hold it. Can you call them today? Ask for Anthony." I stared at that text for a full minute. I scrolled up to check. Had Daniel been in this thread at all? Had he said anything to his sister about splitting costs? Nothing. The last message between Stacy and me was from 2 months earlier when she had sent me a TikTok about wives who don't cook with 3 laughing emojis. I called Daniel at work. He picked up on the 4th ring. "Did you talk to Stacy about splitting the dinner cost?" Silence. Then, "I've been busy, sophomore. I'll get to it. She just texted me asking for my credit card to hold the reservation. Just handle it for now. I'll talk to her this weekend." We did not discuss it that night. We did not discuss it the next night either. And then something worse happened. Thursday evening Diane called. Not Daniel's phone. Mine. She never called me directly. The sight of her name on my screen made my pulse spike immediately. "Sophie, sweetie." Her voice was honey poured over broken glass. "I just wanted to thank you so much for handling the dinner. Tiffany told me you're taking care of everything. You are just the most generous daughter-in-law." I sat down on the edge of the bathtub because my knees felt strange. "Diane, I think there might be a misunderstanding. I've already told all my friends. 32 people, the private room at Rosario's, and my wonderful daughter-in-law is treating everyone. Pastor Michael is coming and the Robinsons and my entire book club. Everyone is so excited." She had already told people. 32 people believed I was hosting this dinner. If I pulled out now, I would not just be saying no to Diane. I would be publicly humiliating her in front of her pastor, her friends, her entire social circle. And she knew that. She absolutely knew that. "Diane, Daniel and I haven't finalized." "Oh honey, don't you worry about the details. You're so good with money. I know you'll make it perfect. I've got to run. Tiffany and I are picking out my outfit. Love you, bye." She hung up before I could finish a sentence. I sat on the edge of that bathtub for 10 minutes, phone in my lap, staring at the tile floor. I felt it then. The trap. It had been closing around me for months. Maybe since the very beginning. And I had been too busy trying to be the good wife, the accommodating daughter-in-law, the woman who keeps the peace, to ever see it clearly. Diane did not need my permission. She did not need Daniel to ask me. She just needed to create a situation where saying no would cost me more than saying yes. When Daniel got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table. No spreadsheet this time. Just our checking account balance on the screen. $2,847. Our credit card $1,200 available. Our savings $340. "Your mother called me," I said. No warmth. No easing into it. "She's told 32 people that I'm paying for her birthday dinner." Daniel set his keys on the counter. He did not look surprised. That is what killed me. He did not look even slightly surprised. "You knew," I whispered. "She mentioned she was going to call you. And you didn't warn me. You didn't tell her we hadn't agreed to this." "I was going to talk to her." "When, Daniel?" "The dinner is in 9 days. She's told her pastor. She's told her entire book club." I pressed both hands flat on the table. "She's told 32 people." He rubbed his face with both hands. Maybe we put it on the credit card and pay it off over a couple months. We said no more debt. That was our agreement. It's one dinner. It's $6,000 we do not have. The words came out louder than I intended. For a woman who has not said a genuinely kind word to me since the day we met. Brandon's face changed. Something shuddered behind his eyes. That's my mother you're talking about. I know exactly who I'm talking about. She wore white to our wedding, Daniel. That landed. I saw it land. A flinch barely visible, but it was absolutely there. He had never acknowledged the dress. Not on our wedding day, not once in any conversation since. It was the family's open secret. The thing everyone saw and no one named. She didn't mean anything by that. She wore a white dress to her son's wedding and cried during our first dance. She compares me to Rebecca every chance she gets. She feeds me food she knows makes me physically sick. And now she has volunteered my wallet for a $6,000 party without asking me a single question. Daniel was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low and strange. My dad would have just done it. He never questioned taking care of his family. I felt like I had been slapped. I am not your father. And you are not your mother's husband. He grabbed his keys off the counter and walked out. The front door closed. Not slammed. Closed. And I heard his truck start in the driveway. He did not come home until after midnight. He slept on the couch. In the morning he acted like nothing had happened at all. I called Lily on my lunch break and told her everything. The spreadsheet, the phone call from Diane, Daniel walking out. She listened without interrupting, which for Lily meant it was truly serious. Ash, sophomore, I need to ask you something and I need you to actually hear it. Okay. Has it occurred to you that this isn't about the dinner? What do you mean? I mean the dinner is the test. Diane is testing whether she controls Daniel or whether you do. And right now, she's winning. I pressed my forehead against my steering wheel. I was sitting in the office parking lot, and the spring sun was warm on my back, and everything should have been completely fine and absolutely nothing was. So what do? You decide what you're willing to lose. I thought about that for the rest of the day, and that night I made a decision. I called Rosario's and spoke to Anthony. I gave him my credit card to hold the reservation. I agreed to the private dining room. I told myself this was the last time. One final act of generosity, and then Daniel and I would have a real conversation with a marriage counselor if necessary about boundaries. It was the biggest mistake I could have made. Not because of the money, because of what Diane did with my willingness to give. 6 days before the party, Stacy called again. So Mom wants a 3-tier cake from Fontaine Bakery. The one she likes is $475. And she wants a photographer. Her friend Cynthia charges $600 for 2 hours. Can you handle those two? I closed my eyes. Breathe. Stacy, I'm already covering dinner for 32 people. But the cake and photographer are separate. It's her 60th, Sophie. You only turned 60 once. I wanted to scream. Instead I said, I'll talk to Daniel. But I already knew exactly how that conversation would go. And I already knew what I was going to do about it. I just did not know yet what Diane had already set in motion behind my back. The conversation she had with Daniel 3 days earlier. The one he never told me about. The one I would not discover until I was standing in the bathroom at Rosario's on April 22nd, overhearing words through a thin wall that made my blood go completely cold. Stay with me because what I overheard in that bathroom changed everything. The days between that phone call with Stacy and the actual dinner passed in a fog of quiet dread. I ordered the cake from Fontaine Bakery. $475. I booked Cynthia the photographer. $600. I confirmed the private dining room with Anthony at Rosario's, the set menu, the wine packages. The total estimate over the phone was $5,280, not including tax and gratuity. With everything, the cake, the photographer, the dinner, I was looking at roughly $6,800. I put it all on our credit card, the one with a $7,500 limit that we had paid down to 0 8 months ago. The one we had sworn we would never touch again except for absolute emergencies. Daniel did not ask about it. Not once. He came home every night, kissed me on the forehead, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. We existed in the same house like two people sharing a waiting room. Polite, distant, waiting for something neither of us would name. On April 22nd, the day of the dinner, I spent 3 hours getting ready. I wore a navy blue dress I had bought for a work gala the year before. I curled my hair. I put on the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, you are about to spend nearly $7,000 to be insulted in a nice restaurant. But I went, because I still believe that if I did this one last thing, it would buy me enough goodwill to have the real conversation afterward. That Diane would see my generosity and soften. That Daniel would see my sacrifice and finally wake up. We arrived at Rosario's at 6:45. The private dining room was genuinely beautiful. Exposed brick, dim lighting, a long table draped in white linen with candles flickering down the center. Diane was already there, holding court in a burgundy dress, her hair freshly done, laughing with Pastor Michael and his wife. When she saw me, she opened her arms wide. There she is. My beautiful daughter-in-law, the woman who made all of this happen. She hugged me too tight. And then she leaned in and whispered in my ear, so quietly only I could hear. Try to smile tonight, sweetheart. You always look so serious. I smiled. Of course I smiled. The guests filed in. 32 people just as promised. Diane's book club ladies, the Robinsons, Aunt Marlene with her husband Roy. Cousins I had never met. Church friends I recognized from photos. Stacy arrived in a red dress that looked brand new and immediately started taking selfies. Daniel shook hands, hugged relatives, slipped effortlessly into his role as the beloved son. He was so good at it. So completely effortless. Dinner was served family style. Platters of chicken parmesan, pasta, bruschetta, Caesar salads. Wine flowed freely. Diane made a toast about being blessed, about family, about how God always provides. She looked directly at me when she said that last part. At 8:30, I excused myself to use the restroom. I needed 2 minutes alone. Just 2 minutes to breathe, to unclench my jaw, to stop performing. The bathroom at Rosario's was down a narrow hallway past the kitchen. A single stall with a heavy wooden door. I went in, locked it, leaned against the wall, and let out the longest breath I had been holding for weeks. And then I heard voices. The hallway was narrow. The wall between the bathroom and a small storage alcove beside it was thin. 2 women were talking just on the other side, and I recognized both voices instantly. Diane and Stacy. She's been quiet all night, Stacy said. You think she's mad? Who cares? Diane's voice was sharp now, stripped of every drop of honey she wore in public. Let her be mad. She can afford it. Mom, what if she finds out about what you told Daniel? My hand froze on the door handle. She won't, Diane said. And even if she does, what is she going to do? Daniel already agreed. He called the attorney on Tuesday. Attorney. The word hit me like a physical blow. He's really going to do it. Stacy sounded almost giddy. He's going to file for a postnuptial agreement? My idea entirely, Diane said. If she refuses to sign, that tells him everything he needs to know about her character. And if she signs, well, then we are protected. Protected from what? From her, Stacy. From a woman who keeps a spreadsheet of every dollar she spends on her own family. You think that is normal? You think that is love? I told Daniel if she is tracking money like that now, imagine what she will do in a divorce. She will take everything. The house, his retirement account, everything. So the postnup separates the assets. What is his stays his. What is her stays hers. And since I helped with the down payment on that townhouse, I stopped breathing entirely. Diane had not helped with the down payment. Not 1 single cent. Daniel and I had saved that money together. $18,000 split evenly before the wedding. I had the bank records. I had the closing documents. She had contributed absolutely nothing. The house is partially mine, Diane finished. Daniel understands that. Stacy laughed. Sophie is going to absolutely lose it. Sophie is going to do what she always does. Smile and write a check. Their voices faded as they walked back toward the dining room. I stood in that bathroom with my back against the cold wall, hands shaking so badly I could not get the lock to turn. My vision went strange, tunneling inward, like the whole world was collapsing to a single point. She had been planning this. Not just the dinner, not just the money. Diane had been engineering my isolation, turning my own husband against me, reframing my financial responsibility as coldness, positioning herself as the victim of a greedy, calculating wife. The dinner was not a birthday celebration. It was a victory lap. And Daniel, my husband, the man who made me laugh at a conference in Nashville, who caught pancakes like a show-off on Saturday mornings, had called an attorney behind my back on his mother's advice. I do not know how long I stood in that bathroom. Long enough that my absence was noticed. I heard Diane's voice from the dining room, loud enough to carry clearly down the hall. "Where's your wife? Who's going to pay for this banquet?" Laughter. Some of it nervous, some of it genuine. Then Diane again, even louder. "Daniel, go find her. The check isn't going to pay itself." Then footsteps approaching down the hallway. A knock on the bathroom door. "Soph, you okay?" I unlocked the door and opened it. Daniel must have seen something on my face because he stepped back immediately. "What's wrong?" "I heard your mother." My voice was terrifyingly calm. In the hallway talking to Stacy. About the postnuptial agreement. About the attorney you called on Tuesday. The color drained from Daniel's face. Actually drained, like watching someone pull a plug. His skin went from warm to gray in under a second. "Soph, let me explain. Did you call an attorney?" "It's not what you think." "Did you call an attorney, Daniel?" My mom suggested. "Yes or no?" "Yes." I nodded once. Then I walked past him down the hallway through the kitchen and out the back door of Rosario's Italian Grill. I did not return to the dining room. I did not say goodbye to anyone. I did not pay the check. I got in my car and I drove. Not home. I couldn't go home. Home was the townhouse on Birchwood Lane that Diane was already claiming was partially hers. Home was the bed where Daniel slept with his back turned to me. Home was a trap. I drove to Lily's apartment. It was 9:40 in the evening. She opened the door in sweatpants, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a single word. I sat on her couch and told her everything. The overheard conversation. The attorney. The postnup. Diane's lie about the down payment. Lily listened with her jaw clenched so tight I could actually see the muscles in her face working. When I finished, she said 3 words. "Call Rachel Cartwright." "Who?" "Divorce attorney. Best in the county. My cousin used her when her ex tried to hide assets. Rachel does not lose." I picked up my phone and looked at it. It had been buzzing nonstop. Daniel. Diane. Stacy. Daniel again. I turned it face down on the couch. 10:15 I texted Daniel one sentence. "Do not let your mother into our house tonight. I need space." At 10:22, I called Rosario's and spoke to Anthony. I told him I would not be paying the bill. I told him the host of the party was Diane and the check should be presented to her table. Anthony sounded confused but agreed. At 10:30, I opened my laptop on Lily's kitchen table and began downloading every financial document I could access. Bank statements. The mortgage agreement. The closing documents showing both names and 0 contribution from Diane. My pay stubs. Daniel's. The credit card statement showing $6,800 in charges for Diane's birthday. At 11:15 I drove home. The house was dark. Daniel's truck was in the driveway. I went inside, locked the front door, and sat on the edge of our bed in my navy dress with my pearl earrings still on, watching the minutes tick past midnight. At 1:45 in the morning my phone lit up. A text from Stacy. "You're done. Mom is coming over. You better have an explanation." I read it twice, set my phone on the nightstand, and I waited. At 2:17 a.m., the front door exploded open. What happened next you are not going to believe. Keep going because we are just getting to the part where everything finally comes apart at the seams. The sound Daniel made when that door flew open was not fear of an intruder. It was the fear of a man being caught between 2 worlds that had finally violently collided in his foyer at 2 in the morning. I did not move from the bed. I sat there in my navy dress, pearls still on, and listened. "Mom, what? How did you get in?" Daniel's voice cracked on the last word. "Stacy has a key," Diane said, like that was the most perfectly reasonable thing she had ever said in her life. I called from the bedroom. "You gave Stacy a key to my house?" My voice was steady. Eerily steady. I had had 4 hours of sitting in the dark to burn through every emotion available to me. Rage, grief, humiliation. What was left was something harder, something cooler, something Diane had never once encountered from me before. I walked out of the bedroom and down the hallway. Diane stood in the foyer, mascara streaked, breathing hard. Stacy was behind her, arms crossed, chin lifted. Aunt Marlene hovered near the door like she was not entirely sure she wanted to be there. Smart woman. There she is, Diane said, pointing at me. There is the woman who humiliated me in front of 32 people. How did I humiliate you? You left. You walked out of my birthday dinner without paying. Anthony brought the check to me. To me, Sophie. $8,412. In front of Pastor Michael. In front of the Robinsons. $8,412. More than the estimate. Someone had ordered a great deal of extra wine. That sounds expensive, I said. How did you handle it? Diane's face contorted. I had to call Roy. She gestured at Aunt Marlene. He put it on his card. Do you understand what you have done? You have embarrassed this entire family. I embarrassed this family, I repeated slowly. Not the woman who screamed, "Who's going to pay for this banquet?" in front of 32 guests while I was in the bathroom? I was joking. You were not joking. You were performing. The same way you have been performing since the very first day I met you. I turned to Daniel. He was standing in the hallway in a t-shirt and boxers, looking like a man watching his own car accident happen in slow motion. Tell your mother about the attorney, Daniel. Diane's eyes flickered. Just for a second, a micro-expression of real panic crossing her face. Tell her what you told me tonight, I continued. Or should I tell her what I overheard at Rosario's? The conversation she had with Stacy about the postnuptial agreement. About how she coached you to call a lawyer. About how she told Stacy that the down payment on this house was partially hers. Dead silence. The kind that presses against your ears. Aunt Marlene looked at Diane. Stacy looked at the floor. Daniel looked at his own hands. Ashley, you're twisting things, Diane started. I have the closing documents, Diane. Your name is not on any of them. You contributed $0 to this house. I have the bank records. I have the wire transfer receipts. Both names. Mine and Daniel's. Not yours. Not one single cent from you. Diane turned to her son. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? And Daniel, the man I had married, the man who caught pancakes on Saturday mornings, said absolutely nothing. He stood there with his arms at his sides and said nothing at all. I watched Diane wait for her son to defend her. I watched the silence stretch between them. And something shifted in that room. Something that felt permanent. Get out of my house, I said. Your house. Stacy stepped forward. Daniel's name is on that mortgage too. And so is mine. And I am telling all three of you to leave right now. It is 2 a.m. You broke into my home with a key I never gave you. If you are not gone in 60 seconds, I am calling 911. Daniel. Diane's voice went shrill. Daniel. He looked at me. Then at his mother. Then at me again. And in the longest 5 seconds of my entire life he said, Mom. You need to go. Diane made a sound I had never heard from any human being before. Something between a gasp and a wail that seemed to come from somewhere deep and wounded inside her. Stacy grabbed her arm. Marlene was already out the door. They left. The door closed. Daniel and I stood in the foyer 3 feet apart, staring at each other across a distance that felt infinite. We are done talking tonight, I said. Tomorrow I am calling a lawyer. You should probably call yours. He opened his mouth, closed it, walked back to the bedroom. I went to the couch. Neither of us slept. Monday morning at 9 o'clock, I called the number on Lily's post-it note. Rachel Cartwright's office. I need a consultation today if possible. It is urgent. Rachel had a cancellation at 2. I took a half day at work, told Marcus I had a personal emergency and drove downtown. Rachel Cartwright was not what I expected. Mid-50s, silver hair in a sharp bob, reading glasses on a chain, and the calm energy of someone who has seen the absolute worst of human behavior and is no longer surprised by any of it. I sat down and told her everything. She took notes without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her pen. Do you have documentation for all of this? Everything. Bank statements, closing documents, credit card statements, text messages from Stacy about the dinner. I downloaded it all the night of the party. Rachel smiled. It was the first genuinely warm thing I had felt in days. Sophie, I need you to understand something. In this state, a postnuptial agreement requires full financial disclosure from both parties and must be entered into completely voluntarily. If your husband's attorney drafted something based on his mother's false claim of contributing to the down payment, and if they intended to pressure you into signing, that is not just unenforceable. That is potential fraud. My hands started shaking again. But this time it was not fear. It was something else entirely. That same afternoon, I filed a police report about the unauthorized entry. I photographed the dent in the drywall where the door had slammed open. I showed the officer Stacy's text. "You're done. Mom is coming over." He documented everything. Tuesday, I opened a personal checking account and redirected my direct deposit. I transferred my half of what remained in joint checking into my new account and left Daniel's half completely untouched. Rachel told me that mattered. Fair, documented, defensible. Thursday, Diane made her next move. And this one nearly broke me. She posted on social media a long, tearful status update that read like a church sermon. She wrote about a family crisis and asked for prayers. She wrote that her son's wife had abandoned her birthday dinner and left her with a bill she could not afford. She wrote that she was heartbroken that the woman her son married put money above family. She did not use my name. She did not need to. Everyone knew. Within 2 hours it had 47 comments. Praying for you. Some people show their true colors. Daniel deserves so much better. Pastor Michael's wife wrote, "Family is everything. Money comes and goes." Weeping. I genuinely sat at Lily's kitchen table and wept reading those comments. Not because they hurt, because I could see so clearly how completely and deliberately the trap had been built. Lily screenshotted everything and sent it to me with one word. Evidence. I forwarded it all to Rachel, who called me within 20 minutes. "This is defamation, Sophie. She is publicly accusing you of financial abandonment with false statements. We can use this. I don't want to sue Diane. You might not have to, but I want you to write a response. Not publicly. Write a detailed factual account of every dollar you have spent on that family. We will have it ready if this escalates further." I wrote it that night. For pages. Every dollar. Every date. Every ignored boundary. I wrote about the mac and cheese she served 3 weeks in a row knowing I was lactose intolerant. I wrote about the white dress. I wrote about the whisper at Rosario's. "Try to smile tonight, sweetheart." Friday, Rachel called with news that changed absolutely everything. I found Daniel's attorney. Small firm on the west side, Marsh & Associates. I had a conversation with his lawyer, a man named Greg Marsh. Sophie listened carefully. Greg told me off the record that when Daniel came in, he presented the postnuptial agreement as a mutual decision. He told Greg that you had agreed to it. He also told Greg that his mother had contributed $18,000 to the down payment on your home. That is a lie. I know. And I told Greg that. I sent him the closing documents, the wire transfer records. Greg went very quiet. And then he said, "I need to have a conversation with my client." Sophie, Greg Marsh is not a bad attorney. When he sees that his client lied to him about material facts, he is going to drop Daniel or force a correction. Either way, the postnup is dead. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building and cried. Not sad tears. Relief. The kind of crying your body does when it finally understands that the trap you have been caught in has a door, and someone just showed you exactly where the handle is. That weekend, I moved my clothes and essentials to Lily's apartment. I did not take anything of Daniel's. I did not touch anything from the common areas. I took my grandmother's pearl earrings, my laptop, my documents, 2 suitcases of clothing. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Daniel came home to find it there. He called me 17 times. I answered on the 18th. "Come home," he said. He was weeping. "Please. I'll fix this." "How?" "I'll cut my mom off. I'll cancel the attorney. I'll do counseling. Whatever you want." I wanted you to choose me, Daniel. One time, I wanted you to hear your mother lie about our home and say, "That's not true." I wanted you to hear her scream about money in front of 32 people and say, "That's enough. I wanted you to be my husband. I am your husband. Then act like it. Because right now you are Diane's son and that is all you are." He did not call again that night. And what happened the following Monday in Rachel's office changed the entire shape of everything. Stay right there because this last part is the one that finally broke everything open into the light. Rachel called Monday morning. "Sophie, I subpoenaed Diane's bank records as part of discovery preparation. I found something you need to see. Can you come to my office at noon?" I was there at 11:45. Rachel slid a printed bank statement across her desk. I looked at the highlighted line. My vision tunneled. Diane had a savings account. Not the modest, struggling situation Daniel had always described to me. A savings account with a current balance of $143,000. $143,000. The woman who had cried about her property taxes going up. Who had sighed and worried about the cost of Stacy's car insurance. Who had let me pay $6,800 for her birthday dinner, while my own savings account contained $340. She had been sitting on $143,000 the entire time. "There's more," Rachel said. She slid a second page across. Monthly deposits. $1,200 a month from a rental property in Glendale she owned outright. And a $2,100 monthly pension from her late husband Robert's employer. Robert's pension. The pension Diane had told Daniel barely covered her groceries. I stared at those numbers until they blurred and then came back into focus and then blurred again. "She's not broke," I said. "She's not even close to broke. She has been draining your marriage financially while sitting on a six-figure nest egg," Rachel said. "Brandon doesn't know." "Are you certain?" No. I was not certain about anything anymore. But I was about to find out because Rachel had one more thing to tell me, and it was the thing that would change everything that followed. There is a hearing scheduled for next Friday. Daniel's attorney filed a motion, before he saw our documentation, requesting temporary financial orders as a precursor to the postnup. That means Daniel will be in a courtroom. And so will you. And Diane's financial records will be entered into evidence. Rachel leaned forward and looked at me directly. "She is going to be exposed, Sophie. In a courtroom. On the record. And there is nothing she can do to stop it." I drove back to work with my hands completely steady on the wheel for the first time in weeks. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. I almost did not read it. Something made me look. "I know what you're doing, Sophie. You think you're so smart with your spreadsheets and your lawyer. But Daniel is my son. He will always be my son. And when this is over, you will have nothing." I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Rachel, and I put my phone in my bag. The 6 days before the hearing were the quietest of my life. I stayed at Lily's, went to work, came home, reviewed documents with Rachel over the phone every evening. Daniel texted me every single day. Long, rambling messages that swung between apology and accusation. "I love you. Please come home." Then 3 hours later, "My mom is devastated. You destroyed her birthday. I hope you're happy." Then the next morning, "I didn't mean that. I'm lost without you. Please." I did not respond to any of them. Rachel told me not to. And for the first time in my marriage, I listened to someone who was genuinely looking out for me. Thursday night, the night before the hearing, Diane made one last play. She showed up at Lily's apartment. I do not know how she got the address. It did not matter. At 7:30 in the evening, the doorbell rang and there was Diane standing in the hallway in her church clothes, holding a Tupperware container of chicken casserole. "I come in peace," she said. Her eyes were red. She looked smaller than I remembered. Like the past 2 weeks had physically shrunk her. Lily stepped in front of me immediately. "She doesn't want to talk to you." "I'm not talking to you, Lily. I'm talking to my daughter-in-law." Diane looked past her at me. "Sophie, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against Lily's furious head-shaking, I stepped forward. "Say what you came to say." Diane's lip trembled. "I know about tomorrow. Daniel told me about the hearing. He told me they have my bank records." She paused. Swallowed. "I'm asking you, mother to daughter, please don't do this. Don't put our family's business in front of a judge. Your family's business became my business when you spent 14 months draining my bank account while sitting on $143,000. Diane flinched. That money is my retirement. Robert left that for me. It's all I have for my future. And what about my future, Diane? What about the $8,700 in repairs and deposits? The $6,800 birthday dinner? The savings account Daniel and I were supposed to be building together? You took all of that while pretending to be struggling. And when that was not enough, you told your son to get a lawyer and lie about paying for our house. Diane's chin lifted. The trembling stopped. And just like that, like flipping a switch, the performance came back on. You'll regret this, she said softly. Daniel will never forgive you. Daniel hasn't forgiven himself yet. That's not my problem to solve. She left the casserole on the doormat. Lily threw it in the dumpster. Friday morning. 9 o'clock. Family court, 4th floor, courtroom 4. Rachel met me in the lobby wearing a charcoal suit and carrying a briefcase that looked like it had seen 100 battles. She handed me a coffee. How are you feeling? Like I'm about to throw up. Good. That means you care. People who don't care don't win. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. A judge's bench, 2 tables, wooden gallery pews. Daniel was already there with Greg Marsh. He looked terrible. Unshaved, dark circles, wrinkled shirt. When he saw me, his eyes went wide and then dropped to the floor. Greg Marsh looked like a man who would genuinely rather be anywhere else on earth. Diane was in the gallery. Stacy beside her. Aunt Marlene was notably absent. The judge, Honorable Patricia Lane, entered at 9:15. She was perhaps 60, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that suggested she had zero patience for nonsense of any kind. Greg spoke first. He explained that his client had initially sought a post-nuptial agreement but was withdrawing the motion. Rachel stood immediately. Your Honor, we object to the withdrawal at this time. My client has evidence of financial fraud and coercive behavior that the court needs to see, regardless of whether the post-nup motion proceeds. Judge Lane looked at Rachel over her glasses. What kind of evidence? Rachel opened her briefcase. Bank records showing that the respondent's mother maintained a savings balance of $143,000 while systematically extracting $8,712 from the marital finances under the pretense of financial hardship. Records showing $3,300 in monthly income from a pension and rental property. A fraudulent claim made to Mr. Marsh that she contributed $18,000 to the couple's home purchase. A claim contradicted by closing documents showing zero outside contribution. Text messages establishing a pattern of financial coercion. And an unauthorized entry into the marital home at 2:17 in the morning. The courtroom went completely silent. I could hear Diane breathing behind me. Short, sharp, cornered animal breaths. Judge Lane read the documents for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. Is Diane present in this courtroom? Diane stood. Her voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, did you tell your son that you contributed to the down payment on his home? Diane's mouth opened, closed, opened again. There was a misunderstanding. It is a yes or no question. I may have implied. Did you have $143,000 in savings while your son and his wife were paying your household expenses? Stacy grabbed Diane's arm. Diane pulled away. That money is my retirement. Ma'am, answer the question. A long suffocating pause. Yes. Judge Lane looked at Daniel. Mr. Calloway, were you aware of your mother's financial situation? Daniel's voice cracked. No, Your Honor. I was not. He turned around and looked directly at Diane. And that is when I saw it. The exact moment Daniel understood everything. Not just the money. The manipulation. The years of I have nobody. The tears on demand. The guilt. The invisible leash she had kept wrapped around his heart since his father died. It landed all at once and his face simply crumbled. Mom, he whispered. You told me you were struggling. Diane said nothing. Weeping. I had tried so hard not to cry in that courtroom and I failed completely, not for myself but for him. For the version of Daniel I had fallen in love with in Nashville, who never had a real chance because of how thoroughly his grief had been turned into a weapon against him. Judge Lane issued her ruling. The post-nuptial motion was denied with prejudice. She ordered full financial disclosure from both parties and recommended mediation. She also noted for the record that the unauthorized entry into the marital home warranted a restraining order if I chose to pursue one. I did not pursue it, not because Diane deserved mercy, because I was done spending my energy on her. Outside the courtroom, Daniel caught me in the hallway. Rachel stepped aside, giving us space but staying within earshot. Sophomore. His eyes were red and swollen. I didn't know about the money, about any of it. I swear. I believe you didn't know about the savings account. But you knew she was lying about the down payment, Daniel. You were at closing. You signed the papers. You knew exactly where that $18,000 came from. He did not deny it. Why? I asked. The question I had been carrying for weeks. Why would you go along with that? Because she's my mom. And after Dad died, she fell apart. And I was the only one left. Stacy was useless, and Mom kept saying if I didn't take care of her, nobody would. And I believed her. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I believed her over you. And I am so sorry, Sophie. I am so sorry. I stood there in that courthouse hallway with the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and I felt something I had not expected at all. Sadness. Not for myself. For him. For the boy who lost his father and was consumed by a mother who turned grief into a weapon and love into leverage. But sadness doesn't fix what's broken. I'm filing for divorce, Daniel. He nodded slowly, like he had known it was coming. Like hearing it said out loud still landed like a blow to the chest anyway. Is there anything I can do? You can get therapy. Real therapy. Not for me. For yourself. Because if you don't figure out where Daniel ends and Diane begins, this will happen to the next woman you love too. Diane was waiting by the elevator when I walked out. She straightened her spine and lifted her chin when she saw me coming. One last performance. I hope you're satisfied, she said. I stopped in front of her. Close enough to smell her perfume, the same one she had worn to our wedding, to every Friday dinner, to the birthday party at Rosario's. Diane, I want you to hear this because I am only going to say it once. I was a good wife to your son. I was generous with your family. More generous than any of you ever deserved. And you spent 14 months trying to destroy me because you could not stand the idea that Daniel might love someone more than he fears you. That is not my failing. That is yours. She opened her mouth. I did not wait. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and did not look back. Tell me in the comments what you would have done differently. Would you have walked out of that dinner when you did? Would you have stayed longer? Would you have fought harder or walked away sooner? And if you have dealt with something similar, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later. Rachel was worth every single penny. I kept my retirement account, my personal savings, and my name on the townhouse, which Daniel agreed to sign over in exchange for a clean split on everything else. He could not afford the mortgage alone, so I sold it 4 months later for a $31,000 profit. Half of that went to paying off the credit card Diane's birthday had maxed out. The other half went into a savings account, a real one, in my name only. Daniel moved back in with Diane. I heard from Lily, who heard from a mutual friend, that he started therapy 3 months after the divorce. I hope that is true. I genuinely hope he finds his way out of that house, out of that guilt, out of the shadow his mother spent years building around him. But that is his journey now, not mine. Diane blocked me everywhere. Stacy sent one last text. Karma's coming for you. I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Rachel, and never responded. Aunt Marlene, of all people, sent me a card in the mail. No return address. It said only, I'm sorry. She's always been like this. You deserved better. I'm writing this from my new apartment. A 1-bedroom in a walkable neighborhood with a coffee shop downstairs and a farmer's market on Saturdays. It is smaller than the townhouse. It is quieter. It is mine. My grandmother's pearl earrings sit in a dish on my nightstand. My spreadsheets are for my own budget now, and nobody calls them cold. Last Saturday, Lily and I went to brunch. She stabbed a piece of French toast and looked at me across the table. You look different, she said. Different how? Like you're not performing anymore. I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and genuinely surprised. She was right. For 14 months, I had been smiling on command, writing checks to keep the peace, shrinking myself down to fit inside a family that was never going to make room for me. And the version of me who walked out of Rosario's that night, the one who stopped smiling and started speaking, she is the one who survived. I do not regret the money. I do not even regret the marriage. Daniel taught me what love looks like when it is conditional. And that lesson cost me $15,512.43 in 1 year of my life. Some people pay more and learn less. But if you take one single thing from my story, let it be this. The moment someone tells you that tracking your own money makes you heartless, they are telling you exactly who they are. Believe them, and then protect yourself. Because no one else at that table ever will.